So today for Goals Question Time, I've got the pleasure of being joined by Jonathan Mast, who's in the US and, by the way, in his car. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
Great. Whereabouts in the world are you? Let's pin you
I
there.
am currently in Dallas, Texas, so I'm here for an event, and as I mentioned, I got caught in traffic, so we're recording impromptu, I guess, right from the car, but I'm parked at least, so we're safe.
Fine, fine. But it's amazing with Zoom, we can be anywhere doing it all. So good to have you with us. So we connected because of our mutual interest in how AI, artificial intelligence, system automation now is changing the world. So could you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and background, please?
Yeah, no, it was great to connect and talk about AI. I am an AI coach and mentor, and I help businesses and business people figure out how to leverage AI to really accomplish three things, probably more than anything else. And that's to save time, to hopefully earn more money, and to also provide more value to their audience. And the thing that has me so excited is probably for the first time in history, we can actually achieve all three of those things at the same time. So, it's not just a matter of, okay, we get to save time and therefore we make some more money, but we can also add more value to those around us, those we work for, those that we're helping out. And I'm just super excited to share some of that and chat about that, especially in the context of your framework and how all that comes together.
No, that's great. Thanks, Jonathan, for sharing your stuff. So yeah, the framework that I outlined in my book now going back about 7, 8 years ago when I wrote it, it was really the book is about how technology is going to change business models in different industries. And in 5 chapters, I outlined there really about what I term the 5 Ps. So what's the purpose for an organization for the change? What's the process? What's the people issues? Who are the partners? And what's the performance measures? So let's take, the impact of AI now. What's the purpose, do you think, that organizations should focus on with the implementation of this tech change?
Well, from my perspective, there's really two key values that I think that they can get out. One is I think that AI can add value to their team. In other words, it can reduce stress with the team. It can help them stay focused on the things that they need to be focused on to provide the most value. And I think it can create a better working environment for everybody around. The other part of that is on the deliverable to those that we serve. As a business, we're always serving someone. And I think AI gives us tools, and I really want to center in my perspective is I do believe they are tools that help amplify our skill and experience to deliver more value to our customers. Whether that's my background as a marketer, meaning I can provide more comprehensive and better quality marketing campaigns than what I could do before, or whether for that matter, maybe you're in home services and you're doing roofing, and it just means that your team now follows protocols and has better SOPs in place and can communicate better with your audience so that in the end of the day, those we serve feel like they've been served more fully.
And I agree. And like your point about the amplification there of what you currently do and doing it better.
Exactly.
Very much so. So taking the process part, what do you think are the steps for an organization to introduce AI?
I think the first thing that's so important is that they understand that they can't do everything right away, that it needs to be an implementation, a step by step process. And also, I think the fact that organizations need to understand that there is no perfect AI tool. I think sometimes we get caught searching before we want to begin, before we want to start. We want to find the perfect tool, and that perfect tool doesn't exist and probably never will. The tools that you have available to your organization will already allow you to leap ahead by magnitudes. And so, whether you're a Microsoft shop and that's Microsoft Copilot, whether you're a Google shop and that's Gemini, or if you're just like many businesses and have ChatGPT, any one of those three tools will allow you and your organization and your team to truly leap ahead and begin implementing AI in effective ways as quickly as today.
Yeah. In fact, I was discussing with a venture capital firm today, and he was sort of saying, "Oh, just give me the tool, give me the AI tool." In the
Yes.
particular area that I've been. I said, "Well, actually, Jonathan," I said, "Well, it's like that. It's not one tool, and whatever we implement now." the systems and the processes are going to change, and you will change your processes as well to fit in with this. But you need to
Absolutely.
understand what the data impacts are going to be and how it's going to impact on your process. And you might not actually be using much AI. Do you find that, Jonathan? It's not, you know, might not be it's automation. It's about getting your data straight and understanding your process is the bigger part of the journey, isn't it?
It really is. You know, I mean, AI is probably not the best name for it because it's really not artificial intelligence. It's more of a predictive intelligence. And of course, we're talking computers with lots of zeros and ones. And as a result, what you were saying is so incredibly important. It's getting our data organized and knowing what we have and being able to give that data to AI to analyze. AI is tremendous at data analysis, but we need to be able to give it the data to do. And I think a lot of people assume that it already has all of that data because of its training. And if it's general data, if it's stuff you could go find in the library, it probably has it. But if it's stuff about your business, about your industry, key things that maybe have come out recently, those are things that need to be fed to the AI model in order to make sure that the AI model is indeed able to analyze the right data to help you move your business forward.
Yeah, and that's the part that becomes proprietary and gives you the advantage, doesn't it, rather than it being generic.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the central P in my five Ps is the people. How are you finding the skill shift and the upskilling and the change management process in the organizations you're seeing?
I think probably the biggest thing we're seeing is trepidation on the part of the people. They're worried that if we embrace AI, that what does that mean for our future with the organization? What does that mean for our careers and our jobs? So I think as leaders, one of the first things we need to do is we need to help reassure the people that this is part of a process. This is something we're going through. It's not going to change. It's not going away. I'm old enough to remember when PCs started showing up on the desks in offices. And some people said, you know, I'm going to keep my typewriter and my editing machine. That worked for a period of time, but it didn't work long term. And the people that embraced the PC and learned how to use it were those that excelled. And I think we're going to see the exact same thing with AI. And I think as leaders, we need to encourage our teams that this isn't about replacing them. This is about amplifying their skill and experience. But it is important that they embrace it because if anybody is going to be replaced by AI, they're going to be replaced by someone that's embraced AI that has their same skills and talents, not just by AI itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, as a person myself, I just find it so empowering and so
Yes,
amazing for me learning new things and being able to do things quicker. So I'm all excited about sharing that, and certainly when I show people and engaging with clients and in the workshops that I run, they get those wow moments of, wow, this is fantastic of what it's doing, and then it's that, oh, right, how can I use it now? I think it's getting over that hump. I think is important. Yeah.
absolutely.
So my fourth P is partners, because going on this journey is that you can't sort of do it by yourself, and you're not going to be
Mhm.
building the code and that by yourself. What sort of partners and suppliers and sort of the part of the ecosystem are you seeing now helps organizations get through this?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to one of my first points, and that's that instead of trying to find a specialty tool, especially as you're getting started, work with the major players in the industry. There's a couple major benefits you get to that. One, those are going to be the most stable platforms, the ChatGPTs, the Gemini, the Claudes. Those are going to be the most stable. They're also going to provide you with the best types of privacy protections, which as a business we want, especially as we're uploading data. We want to make sure that we're doing so in a way that our data isn't going to be shared inappropriately or that data is not going to get out. And anytime we start working with a specialty tool, in my mind at least, there's a greater risk of that data being compromised only because that smaller company may not have the same types of standards in place and certainly doesn't have the same people asking the questions. OpenAI behind ChatGPT, Google behind Gemini, Anthropic behind Claude. They're all looking for lots of funds right now. We know that development of AI and running AI is expensive. They need investors, and those investors are really part of what protects us as users, because those investors are making sure that the protocols are in place to protect privacy, to protect data, and all that. And you may not see that in some of the smaller models, and or for example some of the models out of some other countries. And so I think, and I'm speaking specifically China here, I think if we can focus on those primary players, we know that because of their involvement with our governments and with everything else, that they're going to provide our businesses with the most stable and the most predictable models. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, yeah, and I very much agree. Here in our business, we're partnering with a business called Soft Tools, who are a Microsoft
Yep,
tier one partner. So you
exactly.
know that, they're building on Azure, they're building in a secure environment. It might not be the most up to date in inverted commas, like, it might be that, somebody might have leapfrogged them for the last 2 weeks, but hey, there's so much technology and capabilities now that we can be using and deploying already instead of
Yes,
chasing the next sort of model. But I agree with you that that sort of assurance and that sort of comfort feeling that you've got that power, and that this is being relied on by massive banks and massive other organizations and governments, where security law is going to be most relevant for us medium-sized enterprises, and that I think is so important.
absolutely.
So we've been through purpose, process, people, partners. The fifth P is performance. What
Mm.
sort of performance metrics, time save, consistency, quality of output, revenue uptakes are you sort of seeing? What sort of metrics are you seeing?
This is probably the most broad, because I think it's really each organization that defines that. One of the things that we do often, and you and I have talked about this, is we encourage organizations, in order to get the best possible responses and the best value out of AI, to encourage their teams to follow a prompting framework. In other words, instead of always searching for this elusive perfect prompt, that if they teach their team how to use a framework, it allows them to get incredible responses out of AI without having their team have to have this massive encyclopedia of prompts to go through every time they need something. And so, as you know, when we talked, I have my own favorite system there. We call it our perfect prompting system. And it's just, instead of, again, falling victim to the I need an encyclopedia of prompts to reference, if you now know the framework, it's like how we learn to do, I don't want to say multiplication because I memorized all my multiplication tables, but we learned how to go about and do long form math by following a process. And
Yeah,
then we didn't need to do that anymore. And so we encourage businesses to do the same thing. Our process, it's really simple. It's 4 steps. Tell the AI the type of model that it is, or the type of expert, I'm sorry, that it is.
yeah,
Give it context, just as though Andrew, you and I were working together. I need to give you context if I'm going to be working with you. I need to ask my question. And the one thing that I think most people don't think about is, because we're talking to a computer, we don't say, well, ask me clarifying questions back. And I think that's a really important part to get the best response, because the computer does generally know the information that it should have in order to get it. We may not know that, but
yeah,
by telling it, please ask me any clarifying questions, and literally that means I end my prompt with, please ask me any clarifying questions. Now it's empowered to come back to us and say, hey, you wanted me to write a press release, but you didn't give me these 3 bits of information that I really need in order to do that well. And by following a framework like that and encouraging your teams to do so, I think you'll find that the quality of the responses you get from AI grows exponentially. And that's, of course, what we want.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, excellent point. Excellent point. I think one of the things that I realized in my early use of GPT was that sort of thing, and about treating it as a dumb assistant or a smarter assistant and sort of stuff like that. But I actually got to the point where I said, I actually want to use a name for you. So I got GPT to,
Yes.
I said, I want three names: a male, a female, and a gender neutral. So whenever I'm interacting now, I do think, is it Grace I'm speaking to? Is it
Yes.
is
Yes.
it Peter or Tony with spelt with an I? So it's like, because you do build up that rapport, and some people think it's weird, but it's I think that's a very useful way of thinking about it, rather than thinking in terms of, well, I've got to be a coder, I've got to be a prompt expert. No, just think in those ways as you just talked about for your perfect prompting.
Yeah, I mean these are large language models trained on natural language processing. And Andrew, I encourage people, just again as if you and I were going to collaborate on a project, to really communicate in the same way. Like you said, you don't need to be a developer, you don't need to be a programmer. They're language models. So if we communicate, just like communication helps our relationship, it'll help your relationship with that AI model as well.
Yeah. No, great point. Now, so in my book, I outlined those five P's around those, the process to performance and that there. I also believe, though, that many technologies have meant that there's been a new value chain created. So,
Mm.
for example, the electric motor into electric cars, that's a very different business model than the gasoline car, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Battery technologies, it's charging infrastructures, it's autonomous vehicles. So if you take that physical world example and you now say, okay, we're going to have AI, which is now going to do sales planning, it's going to do product planning, it's going to help with manufacturing, it's going to help with customer follow-up, it's going to have knowledge, it's going to have this data that it's building up. Where might you see, do you think we're going to see new business models and new value chains coming along when these things are deployed by businesses, which takes us beyond the just being a useful assistant or augmenting our particular roles? Where do you think the step change might happen?
I think a lot of that's going to happen in twofold. One of it is data analysis. We're going to be able to analyze data far better than we've ever been able to do so before, and more quickly. I think the other part of that is when we're going to start marrying what I would call automations with AI, and the ability for us to take those tasks that right now need to be done, but maybe aren't really enjoyable, maybe aren't even the most productive use of our time, but we've got to do that every day. Very simple example, and not one that's terribly applicable, but it's like sweeping the floor. In the old days, we had a vacuum cleaner, and I had to get out and I had to vacuum our floors on a regular basis to get the crumbs and the dust and to keep the flooring in good shape. Well, nowadays I have an AI based robot that literally does that for us every night, and it goes out and does that. And I think we're going to see a lot of business evolution and new opportunities coming up in those areas, where we're going to have very smart appliances, we're going to have smart utilities and things like that that help us do things that right now, candidly, we probably can't even imagine not doing, but are things that can easily be automated and offloaded to something to allow us then to be more creative and to use our talents and our skills in the best way possible.
Yeah. No, I think you've made a good step change there because I think when I speak to people now, sort of say, well, remember back in the late 90s, the internet, people thought people online were weird and they weren't going to sell direct to people. But
Yes.
when Jeff Bezos started selling books, and why is he doing that? We're going to sell other things. But for me, the physical thing when the internet really took off was when we had that mobile device, right? And we had a
Correct.
step change.
Yes.
And I think you're making a good point there. And I often say, yeah, we're seeing AI at the moment where it's almost like the old internet browsers, right? You're doing chat sort of type stuff and that with it. But when the AI gets physically embodied in cars, cleaning robots, cooks,
Yes.
things like that, we're going to see some sort of step change. And that could be within the next few months or the next few years. And then that's a significant change than what we're sort of seeing in that at the moment with just text and database sort of
I
type
believe so.
type.
Yeah.
But one area we've been working on is investment analysis and
Yeah.
using data sort of type things at the moment. The current way of doing things is funds companies receive 1,000 pitch decks a year, and individual entrepreneurs have to send out hundreds of pitch decks. Now,
Yes.
the AI can do filtering of that. The AI can do background research. The AI can do interviews of the entrepreneurs. And
Absolutely.
and I've been provocative and said, well, some investment funds could move from just making one $5 million investment to making 50, $100,000 investments because the AI now is just about good enough to be able to
Hmm.
do all of that and automating that process. So to me, that's an example of where we might see these sort of step changes in the processes which come with the sort of AI from, and that will save up so much time and effort and get good ideas invested in, for example.
I think that's a tremendous example, and I think it's really applicable as well of the types of things that we're going to see. Some of that's going to be hard to predict until it happens, but what I think is so exciting about that is these opportunities, like you mentioned, are already there. I mean, you could already take that one $5 million investment and at least do that into 10 $500,000 investments because the AI can already help you identify those that much faster and so that you can still make the best use and stewardship of your resources.
Yeah. No, great. Jonathan, thanks very much for sharing your
Thank
insights,
you.
having the discussion on that with me today. I think there's hopefully provoked some good responses. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Connect with you on LinkedIn or what's your
Yeah, if they just remember my name, it's Jonathan Mast, M-A-S-T. They can go to jonathanmast.com. Or if they're watching and they can see my white beard, if they look for white beard in AI, you'll find me. And I've got tons of free resources. I'd love to connect.
fantastic? Thanks, Jonathan. Great to be discussing with you again.
Thanks, Andrew.